What's up, world? I'm Cameron McKinney, and this is Pop Culture Spotlight, a podcast about the movie Power Ballad. Here's a quick synopsis. Musician Rick Power is content being a wedding singer with a family until when during one weekend he ends up meeting Danny Wilson, a pop star from a former boy band who steals a song he wrote and turns it into a hit. The film stars Paul Rudd, Nick Jonas, Havana Rose Liu, Jack Rayner, Marcella Plunkett, Beth Fallon, and Peter McDonald. Standout performances. I grew up during the height of Paul Rudd in the Apatow comedies Anchorman, the 40-year-old version, Knocked Up. At that point, he was, in my opinion, the funniest actor on planet Earth, and because of all of that success, I went back and watched his early work in Clueless and Romeo and Juliet. I am a big fan of Paul Rudd, but have not loved his recent run of movies, which has mostly been dominated by not one but two franchises, the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Ghostbusters. I like him in the first Ant-Man and can admit he works as the character. I just don't think he's used his Marvel fame enough to do interesting work outside of Marvel. Ghostbusters Afterlife and Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is my real problem. In those, I think he's attempting to be a family-friendly father figure, which is the absolute last thing I want out of Paul Rudd, and one could definitely argue that Rudd is not at the height of his power because of the current state of comedy in movies, which is basically non-existent, and maybe he's not a versatile enough actor to fit in serious dramas. I just don't think he's taken enough risk lately. Which gets me to Power Ballad, where he plays wedding singer Rick Power, who has given up his ambition to start a family and is happy with that until he sees someone else turn his song into a major hit. I like Rudd playing against his own likability. He's playing a complicated character who you root for because he's played by Paul Rudd. I hope this is the beginning of a great run for Paul Rudd, hopefully full of surprises. He's an interesting actor to talk about because he is a movie star. Most people know the name Paul Rudd, but it's weird to think about where he fits in the modern movie landscape. I mean, yes, to most people, he is Ant-Man, but what happens when he's no longer that character? What does the future hold for Paul Rudd? Sorry, I don't see him being the lead of a Christopher Nolan movie anytime soon. I don't think the great directors of our time are waiting to work with Paul Rudd, and they don't make the kinds of movies that made him a famous actor in the first place. I was excited to see him in Power Ballad because he's working with a director in John Carney that I believe is top notch, and that is not something that Paul Rudd has done enough lately. And some of the comedic directors that he used to work with now make serious movies. I mean, Adam McKay has gone on to work with the likes of Christian Bale and Leonardo DiCaprio, and he did not take Paul Rudd with him. When Adam McKay made more serious movies like The Big Short and Vice, he didn't take Will Ferrell with him. He didn't take Paul Rudd with him. He took Steve Carell with him. And I believe that's part of the reason that the acting careers of Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd are in a very weird place, because these are not actors that most people feel like fit in every kind of movie. I should probably mention the film Friendship. I did not like that movie. I know there are some of you that believe that that was the comeback movie for Paul Rudd. That movie was just not my kind of film. And I haven't seen Death of a Unicorn or Anaconda. Paul Rudd will once again play Ant-Man in Avengers Doomsday, but the upcoming movie of his I'm most excited for is The Statement, from Spotlight director Tom McCarthy, with a cast that includes Paul Giamatti, Evan Peters, John Turturro, Amy Ryan, Jason Clarke, and Zach Woods. The most meta thing about Power Ballad is the fact that the fictional famous pop star in the film, Danny Wilson, is played by none other than Nick Jonas, and I'm really conflicted by this character. The movie clearly doesn't want you to mock and laugh at him like Andy Samberg's Connor for Real in Pop Star Never Stop, Never Stopping, but I just find it nearly impossible to relate to the character. I'm supposed to be empathetic towards a guy who was in a successful boy band but is struggling to break out and have a solo career. I just can't, and it has to do with him stealing the song written by Rudd's character. Initially, he's just playing the song when his girlfriend hears it and begs him to release it publicly. That's where I thought this movie was headed. I thought it wasn't going to be about the popularity of the song, but instead about him telling his girlfriend she was the inspiration for it. And I don't want to spoil the movie, but it's not close to that. Instead, Wilson breaks up with his girlfriend almost immediately, and for me, it's the moment where his character loses any humanity he had. My issue is the movie treats Danny Wilson as a real person, but also as pure satire of the modern pop star, and he works more for me as the latter. Acting-wise, Nick Jonas is just fine. Who am I to tell John Carney how to construct a movie? I just would have liked it more if it was about his girlfriend liking the song more than it was about him becoming famous again. My reasoning is I would have been far more empathetic towards a guy who's singing the song and his girlfriend now thinks he's brilliant because of it, and he doesn't know how to tell her it's not his song. The moment you lose the girlfriend, you're left with a character who just looks selfish and only cares about being famous, which is not something I'm uber empathetic towards. Why Power Ballad was on my radar at all is because of writer-director John Carney, who is a filmmaker so signature he makes films about musicians. The first I saw was Begin Again, which has all-time great performances from Keira Knightley and Mark Ruffalo. If you have not seen this movie, do yourself a favor. Keira Knightley definitely should have been nominated for an Oscar, and same goes for Mark Ruffalo. Looking back at that movie, in that one, he also worked with another major musician in Adam Levine, and I think he gets a really good performance out of Adam Levine. I've since gone on to watch Sing Street and Flora and the Sun. Sing Street is just one of the best feel-good movies of all time. It is impossible to dislike that film. And Flora and the Sun has an unreal performance from Eve Hewson. The performances in his movies are why they resonate with me, but I have to admit the songs in them are really good. And looking at Power Ballad, it's the key to the movie that you believe the song that these two characters are arguing about, how to write a song without you, could be a hit. What I like about him as a filmmaker is the way that he uses emotions in his movie. His movies, to me, always feel emotionally honest. The key difference of Power Ballad from his other films is this is a movie that relies so heavily on a premise. I mean, that is how you are going to sell this movie to somebody. Are you going to want to watch a movie where a regular guy gets a song stolen from him by a pop star? I mean, that is a premise setup kind of movie, not the kinds of movies he's made in the past. And I would argue the thing that works in this movie is the stuff that connects it to his other films. I mean, the character that Paul Rudd is playing feels like a real human being that you root for, and you understand what he's going through. He wants to be a successful musician, and he's seeing somebody else become uber successful with a song that he wrote. He also, throughout the movie, gets really agitated by the idea that people do not believe he wrote this song. Power Ballad to me is nowhere close to his best movie, and it has to do with the fact that I find the film to be so one-sided. Paul Rudd is playing a regular guy who feels like a real person, whilst Nick Jonas is playing an avatar for the modern pop star. And probably my biggest issue with the character is this idea that he's not a bad guy. He's just under an intense amount of pressure to keep his fame. And that pressure to remain rich and famous is enough to justify him stealing the song. Maybe this is unfair to say, but I feel like John Carney Carney cares about the character of Rick Power and doesn't care about the character of Danny Wilson. That the character of Danny Wilson is just a plot device to move the movie forward. Another thought I have is that the emotional elements of this movie are in conflict with the satirical elements of the film, and I think John Carney as a director is way better with emotions than he is at satire. This movie does absolutely no favors to the character that Nick Jonas is playing. I mean, he doesn't have a solid enough reason to be lying about writing this song. Yes, I get it. This is a movie. There needs to be a conflict, so you need to have this pop star character who will do anything and everything to come up with a hit song. I get it. It can't be as easy as just give this wedding singer a writing credit on the song, because if he does that, you don't have a movie. I'm not naive. Again, I keep going back to that moment where Danny Wilson sings the song to his girlfriend and the girlfriend thinks it's about her. That's what the movie should have been about. The fact that his girlfriend thinks the song is for her. So you keep her in the movie. You make her an integral part of the film. You don't just let her go the moment the song becomes a hit. I think that is the biggest mistake of the film. Paul Rudd's character is given so many things to make him feel like a human being you should care about. He's given a wife. He's given a kid. He's given a bunch of friends. Danny Wilson is given absolutely nothing. Throughout the movie, I was just thinking to myself, why should I like this guy at all? The most compelling scene about the conflict about the song is where Jonas's Danny tells Rudd's Nick that the only reason it became a hit is because of my fame, saying it's not easy to turn a song into a hit. Now, that's an interesting argument. The problem is, it's not one that's possible to end. There's no resolution to that argument. No one really knows why a song ever becomes a hit. Is it about the person singing the song, or is it about how well written the song actually was? What I like about that scene in that moment is I believe that Nick Jonas's character Danny Wilson actually believes what he is saying, that he thinks that he can turn any song into a hit song. I think the problem with that argument is, then why haven't you had a hit in a really long time? Right? Like, that scene throws in an argument way too late into the movie. It's an idea that's just thrown out there. It's not really mulled over for too long. And look, I don't think John Carney as a filmmaker cares about who gets credit for writing that song, and rightfully so. I don't think that's interesting enough for a movie. I think what he's saying with this movie is, you have this guy who had everything he needed, and then when something that he wanted a long time ago actually happens to somebody else, he gets upset. He's absolutely in the right for being upset about him not getting credit for writing the song, but what he's irrationally upset about is he's not super famous like he thought he was going to be, that he's in this wedding band not being able to play the type of music he wants to. Carney to me just has a lot more to say about the struggling musician who's trying to make a living than he does on the famous pop stars. I mean, it's the same with the Adam Levine character in Begin Again. That character is only interesting when he's paired with Keira Knightley and it's about that relationship. That movie has absolutely nothing to say about him actually becoming famous. I know it might feel like I'm ripping this movie. I'm actually not. I do really like the film Power Ballad. I just think so highly of this particular filmmaker, and I've seen him make these kinds of movies way better than this one. Like, I think Begin Again is one of my all-time favorite movies. It would be in my top 10 films of all time. I absolutely love everything about that movie. Power Ballad was sold as like this two-hander for Paul Rudd and Nick Jonas, and I thought, wow, that's a really odd duo. But really, the movie is about Paul Rudd's character, Rick Power. It's not that interested in Danny Wilson. I will say all of their scenes together are really good. I just talked about it. I think my favorite scene in the movie is when Danny Wilson is saying, I'm the reason this song is a hit. You couldn't turn this exact same song into something memorable. My star power is the reason people love this song. Basically, what the movie is getting at is here's this guy who wants what this other guy already has, but the guy who has it is insanely unhappy. And he has to do morally wrong things like stealing songs from a regular guy to maintain the thing that isn't making him happy in the first place. Meanwhile, you have what this guy should want: a family, a wife, a kid, friends who care about you. And that's a message I think we can all agree with. I just think the movie takes a few messy turns to get there. I do want to talk a little bit more about John Carney because I think it's odd that we live in this era where there's a guy like Carney who is doing a specific type of thing. He's an auteur filmmaker, yet most people do not know him by name, and his movies don't end up being hits or, in my opinion, get the awards recognition they deserve. And I think it's fair to point out that if this was the first movie of Carney's I was seeing, I probably would have been more positive about the movie, but I have a history with this particular filmmaker. I absolutely love Begin Again and think very, very highly of Sing Street and Flora and the Sun. I think overall I did get what I wanted out of this movie was a really good performance from Paul Rudd where he's really challenging himself. I mean, he's singing in this movie. He is doing something in this movie I have not seen him do before. And there is a big part of me that wants him to go back to being the funniest guy in movies. The problem with that is there are not movies for him to be funny in anymore. He can't be the comedic actor that he used to be because they're not making Knocked Up right now. So he needs to find a way to survive in films, and how he does that is by making movies with really good directors like John Carney and in the future Tom McCarthy. I want more from Paul Rudd, and I think he deserves more than being the nerdy science teacher in a Ghostbusters movie. Overall, where I land on Power Ballad is it's a very good movie that had the potential to be great, but I think it needed to pick a lane between being an emotionally grounded movie or being a full-on satire. I just don't care about the pop star character in this movie, and I don't know if the filmmaker of this movie cares about that character. And maybe that's the point, but I think that's a problem that I don't care about him. I don't care about the character of Danny Wilson. And I in no way mean that as a diss towards Nick Jonas. He is good in the movie and is making the most out of what he's given. Here's the last thing I'll say about the film Power Ballad. I think this is just another example of John Carney being really good with emotions in his movies, and he's not the best at plotting a movie. But the issue is this is a movie that demands a plot. Again, it's all about the premise. Here is this pop star who has stolen this song from a regular guy. I think most will agree with me after watching this film. The film cares about the regular guy and does not care about the pop star. The film works best as a vehicle for Paul Rudd and has restored my faith in him as an actor moving forward. Again, before this movie, I was quite down on Paul Rudd. I did not like the career choices he was making. I think this is him getting back on track. And who doesn't want that? I mean, who doesn't like Paul Rudd? We all want him to remain culturally relevant. He is a star. Everyone knows the name Paul Rudd. We all want him to do well in movies. And in the future, I hope he gets an outlet to showcase how funny this guy can be, because I still believe when he's at his best, Paul Rudd is still one of the funniest actors alive. Bring back comedies starring Paul Rudd immediately. Thanks for listening to this edition of Pop Culture Spotlight. I'm Cameron McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I recommend you check out Power Ballad. Next week, it's a big one. I'm talking about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, starring Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, and Tom Holland. So tune into that, and please rate, review, and subscribe.